In a quiet moment that few expected to matter, Bruce Lee revealed a truth about combat that stunned everyone present. What unfolded lasted only seconds, yet its effect lingered far longer. There was no exchange of blows, no test of endurance, and no visible struggle. One precise movement was enough to take away stability, control, and certainty, leaving its impact felt for days afterward. This was not a display of aggression or raw force. It was a demonstration of understanding, of how timing can dismantle strength, how precision can overpower size, and how knowledge of the human body can decide an outcome before resistance even begins. This moment exposed a level of effectiveness that could not be argued with, only experienced. The situation unfolded in a calm, controlled training environment rather than a place of hostility. It was the kind of space where skill was explored, not tested through anger or rivalry. Confidence filled the room, but it was mixed with curiosity rather than aggression. Everyone present had come to learn something, even if they did not yet realize what that lesson would be. At this stage in his life, Bruce Lee had already begun to stand apart from traditional expectations. His movements were efficient and compact. He did not rely on exaggerated stances, dramatic preparation, or visible strain. To some observers, this restraint was confusing. They were used to seeing power expressed through wide movements, muscular tension, and forceful impact. Bruce Lee's approach seemed quiet by comparison. Questions naturally followed. People asked why his techniques appeared so small, why his actions seemed almost understated. They wondered how such minimal motion could generate meaningful effect. To those trained in systems that valued visible strength and repetition, his method felt incomplete. It looked as though something was missing, as if more effort should have been involved. This uncertainty did not come from disrespect. It came from unfamiliarity. When people encounter a method that contradicts what they have learned, skepticism often replaces understanding. Bruce Lee's approach challenged deeply held assumptions about what power should look like. Instead of resisting force with force, he emphasized structure, timing, and alignment. Instead of pushing harder, he focused on positioning and awareness. Among those watching was an individual who embodied this curiosity. He was confident in his own ability and honest about his doubts. He did not step forward to challenge Bruce Lee's reputation, nor did he intend to provoke conflict. He simply wanted to understand. His skepticism was direct but not hostile. He believed that feeling the technique would answer questions that words could not. The expectation was modest. He anticipated discomfort, perhaps a sharp sensation or momentary imbalance. He did not expect injury or lasting effect. In his mind, this was a controlled demonstration, not a test of endurance or resilience. He trusted that the environment was safe, and that Bruce Lee would not use unnecessary force. Bruce Lee listened without interruption. He did not defend his methods or attempt to persuade through explanation. He understood that some lessons cannot be taught verbally. Instead of engaging in debate, he chose clarity through demonstration. His response was calm and unhurried. The conditions were controlled. There was no urgency, no raised voices, and no emotional tension. This was not about dominance or proving superiority. It was about illustrating a principle. Bruce Lee ensured that everyone understood the demonstration would be precise and deliberate, not reckless. The atmosphere remained neutral as Bruce Lee prepared. There was no dramatic build-up. He did not change posture to appear more threatening. He did not adjust his tone or demeanor. Everything about his presence suggested restraint rather than anticipation. This moment highlighted a key difference in perspective. While others focused on what power looked like, Bruce Lee focused on what power accomplished. He was less concerned with appearance and more concerned with outcome. His willingness to demonstrate under calm conditions reflected confidence rooted in understanding rather than ego. The opponent stood ready, relaxed, and attentive. There was no tension in his posture, no defensive mindset. He trusted that the demonstration would be informative rather than overwhelming. This trust would soon be tested. In this quiet setup, nothing suggested that the moment would be remembered long after it ended. There were no signs of confrontation or drama, yet it was precisely this calm environment that allowed the lesson to be felt so clearly. Without distraction or resistance, the effect of the technique would speak for itself. What followed was not shaped by emotion or force, but by precision, and it began from a place of curiosity, not conflict. Bruce Lee approached combat very differently from how it was commonly taught. While many systems focused on strength, toughness, and endurance, Bruce Lee focused on understanding how the human body actually functions under pressure. He believed that every body, no matter how strong or trained, has natural vulnerabilities. These weaknesses do not require overwhelming force to exploit. They require accuracy, awareness, and correct timing. Bruce Lee understood that balance is the foundation of all movement. Without balance, strength cannot be expressed. Muscles rely on structure to function properly. When that structure is disrupted, even the strongest body loses effectiveness. This understanding guided his choice of techniques. Instead of meeting strength with strength, he aimed to remove the conditions that made strength possible in the first place. The technique he chose in this situation was based on this principle. It was not designed to impress visually, or to demonstrate power in an obvious way. There was no wide motion, no dramatic strike, and no visible build-up. To someone unfamiliar with his thinking, it might have looked almost insignificant, but its purpose was very specific: to interrupt the body's ability to remain stable. Bruce Lee paid close attention to how the nervous system and balance worked together. He understood that certain points and angles, when contacted at the right moment, can confuse the body's coordination. The muscles may still be strong, but the signals that tell them how to support weight become disrupted. This creates a sudden loss of control that cannot be resisted through effort alone. Rather than striking to cause pain or visible injury, Bruce Lee aimed for collapse. Collapse does not mean destruction, it means the temporary failure of structure. When the body can no longer support itself properly, power disappears instantly. In that moment, resistance becomes impossible, regardless of size or strength. This approach reflects a deeper philosophy. Bruce Lee believed that force is inefficient when understanding is available. Using excessive power requires more energy and creates more risk. Precision, on the other hand, allows a result with minimal effort. This efficiency was central to how he viewed mastery. Timing played a crucial role in the technique. Bruce Lee waited for the exact moment when the body was most vulnerable. Balance is not constant. It shifts continuously during movement. By acting at the precise moment when support was weakest, he ensured maximum effect with minimal action. Placement was equally important. The technique required accuracy rather than speed alone. A few inches in the wrong direction would reduce its effectiveness. Bruce Lee's training emphasized awareness of distance, angle, and alignment. These details allowed him to apply techniques with consistency rather than relying on chance. Another reason Bruce Lee favored this type of technique was control. Striking for damage introduces unpredictability. Pain responses vary from person to person. Structural disruption, however, produces a more reliable outcome. When balance fails, the body responds in a predictable way. This method also reduced unnecessary harm. Bruce Lee was not interested in injuring others to prove a point. He preferred techniques that demonstrated effectiveness without lasting damage. The goal was understanding, not domination. By choosing this technique, Bruce Lee illustrated a key idea. Power is not about how much force you generate, but how well you understand what you are affecting. When structure collapses, strength becomes irrelevant. No amount of effort can compensate for lost balance. This choice reflected years of observation, experimentation, and refinement. Bruce Lee did not collect techniques randomly. He selected what worked under real conditions, stripped of excess. Each technique served a purpose, and this one served to demonstrate how quickly control can be lost when the body's structure is interrupted. In choosing precision over power, Bruce Lee showed that effectiveness does not need to look aggressive to be decisive. Quiet techniques, applied with understanding, can produce results that leave no doubt about their impact. When Bruce Lee finally moved, the timing surprised everyone present. There was no visible preparation that signaled what was about to happen. No shift in stance meant to intimidate. No tightening of the shoulders or exaggerated breath. His body did not announce intention. It simply acted. The movement itself was small and contained. Bruce Lee did not step forward dramatically or swing with force. His action was compact, traveling the shortest possible distance to its target. This economy of motion made it difficult to track with the eye. By the time observers realized something had happened, it was already over. What made the execution so effective was not speed alone, but coordination. The movement connected balance and nerve response at the same time. It was placed with accuracy at an angle and moment that disrupted the opponent's structure instantly. The technique did not seek to overpower the body, but to confuse it. There was no sharp cry or visible sign of pain. The opponent did not react emotionally or defensively. Instead, his legs began to lose strength. The change was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. His posture shifted slightly, as though the ground beneath him had changed without warning. Within moments, that shift became undeniable. The body struggled to organize itself. Muscles that should have supported weight no longer responded properly. Balance disappeared, not because of force, but because coordination had been interrupted. The body reacted automatically, without time for conscious thought. This response happened faster than the mind could process. Pain was not the trigger, confusion was. The nervous system attempted to correct the imbalance, but the signal arrived too late. The structure failed before resistance could form. Observers noticed that the opponent was not thrown or struck down. He simply could not remain upright. His stance collapsed inward, as if the foundation supporting him had been quietly removed. There was no dramatic fall, just a loss of stability that could not be resisted. Bruce Lee did not press forward. He did not add another movement or attempt to amplify the result. The demonstration had already achieved its purpose. Additional action was unnecessary. He stepped back calmly, his posture unchanged. His expression remained neutral. There was no sign of aggression or excitement. This restraint made the moment even more striking. It was clear that what had happened was intentional, controlled, and complete. The entire sequence lasted only seconds. It began without warning and ended without emphasis, yet its effect was immediate and unmistakable. The simplicity of the execution contrasted sharply with the outcome, leaving those present trying to understand how such a small action could produce such a powerful result. What stood out most was the absence of effort. Bruce Lee did not appear strained or tense. His breathing remained steady. The movement flowed naturally, as though it required no exertion at all. This revealed a level of mastery, where technique operates without force or hesitation. The opponent, meanwhile, struggled to regain control. The body attempted to respond, but coordination remained compromised. Standing required concentration. Walking felt uncertain. The effect lingered beyond the moment itself. This execution demonstrated a key truth. When timing, placement, and understanding align, effort becomes secondary. The body responds before thought intervenes, and resistance never has a chance to form. By stepping back and allowing the result to speak for itself, Bruce Lee emphasized restraint over dominance. He showed that the most effective action is often the one that needs no continuation. The moment ended as quietly as it began, leaving behind a lesson that required no explanation. The demonstration was complete. In the moments following the demonstration, the opponent reacted in a way that surprised even himself. His first instinct was to rely on willpower. He attempted to stand upright, believing that control could be restored through effort and focus. Yet as he tried to stabilize his body, it became clear that something was not responding as expected. His legs were still strong, but they no longer obeyed him in the usual way. The connection between intention and movement felt delayed and unreliable. Standing required concentration rather than instinct. Balance, which is normally maintained without thought, now demanded effort. There was nothing dramatic about the scene. No visible injury, no expression of pain. From a distance, it might have appeared that little had happened. Yet those watching closely could see the difference. The opponent's posture was uncertain. His weight shifted unevenly. Each step required adjustment. Walking became unstable. The simple act of moving forward felt unfamiliar. The body hesitated where it normally flowed. Muscles attempted to compensate, but coordination was no longer automatic. It was as though the body was waiting for instructions that arrived too late. This subtlety made the effect even more unsettling. Strength was still present, but control was not. The opponent was not overwhelmed by pain, but by confusion. His nervous system struggled to organize movement smoothly, and no amount of determination could immediately fix that. Throughout this moment, Bruce Lee remained calm and attentive. He did not turn away or dismiss what had happened. Instead, he watched closely, ensuring the demonstration had not caused lasting harm. His posture and expression showed responsibility rather than triumph. Bruce Lee understood the difference between effectiveness and excess. He had no interest in injuring someone to make a point. The technique had served its purpose the moment balance was lost. Anything beyond that would have been unnecessary. He spoke calmly, offering reassurance rather than instruction. His demeanor made it clear that this was not a contest. The demonstration was complete, and the priority now was safety and recovery. As time passed, the opponent slowly regained partial control. Standing became easier, though still uncertain. Movement improved, but not immediately. The body needed time to re-establish coordination. This gradual return reinforced the lesson that had just been delivered. What stood out most was the contrast between appearance and effect. There were no bruises, no visible signs of damage, yet the impact was undeniable. The body had been disrupted at a level deeper than muscle, and recovery required patience rather than strength. Bruce Lee's calm presence emphasized an important point. True control includes knowing when to stop. He had demonstrated effectiveness without aggression, precision without cruelty. The technique was not meant to cause long-term injury, but its immediate impact could not be dismissed. Those observing understood that what they had witnessed was not about force but understanding. The aftermath revealed how deeply the body relies on coordination and balance, and how fragile those systems can be when disrupted correctly. The opponent did not leave embarrassed or humiliated. He left thoughtful. The experience challenged his assumptions about power and resistance. It showed him that strength alone cannot guarantee control. In this quiet aftermath, the lesson settled in. Bruce Lee had proven his point without raising his voice or his fists. The effect spoke for itself long after the movement had ended. The moment passed, but the understanding remained. The reason the opponent continued to struggle for several days had little to do with physical damage. There were no torn muscles, broken bones, or visible injuries. Instead, the cause lay deeper, in the way the body communicates with itself. Bruce Lee understood this distinction very well, and it was central to why the technique was so effective. The human body depends on constant communication between the brain and the nervous system. Every movement, no matter how simple, requires signals to travel quickly and accurately. These signals tell muscles when to contract, how much force to apply, and how to maintain balance. When this communication flows smoothly, movement feels effortless. When it is disrupted, even basic actions become difficult. Bruce Lee's technique did not aim to overpower muscle. Instead, it interfered with this communication process. By striking with precise timing and placement, he disrupted the body's coordination system. The muscles themselves remained strong, but the instructions guiding them were temporarily scrambled. This is why the effect did not appear dramatic at first glance, yet lingered far longer than expected. This type of disruption creates a state often described as neurological shock. It does not mean damage in a permanent sense, but rather a temporary confusion within the nervous system. The body struggles to organize itself properly. Movements feel delayed or uncertain. Balance, which normally operates automatically, requires conscious effort. What made this experience unsettling for the opponent was the contrast between strength and control. He could still generate force, yet he could not rely on it. His legs did not respond with their usual precision. Standing felt unstable. Walking required careful attention. This disconnect between intention and execution created frustration that could not be solved by effort alone. Recovery from this type of disruption requires time. Willpower cannot speed up the process. Muscles must wait for signals to normalize. The nervous system needs time to recalibrate. Pushing harder does not restore coordination. It often makes it worse. This is why toughness was irrelevant. Only patience allowed recovery. Bruce Lee understood that many people misunderstand strength. They see it only as physical capacity, ignoring the systems that allow that capacity to function. Without timing, balance, and signal, strength becomes useless. This is why his techniques focused on disrupting structure rather than inflicting damage. The body's coordination system is delicate. It operates constantly, adjusting posture, distributing weight, and responding to changes in position. When this system is interrupted suddenly, the body cannot immediately compensate. Even after the initial shock passes, residual effects can linger as the system slowly returns to normal. This lingering effect explains why the opponent struggled for days rather than minutes. The body needed time to rebuild trust in its own signals. Each movement required recalibration. Confidence in balance had to be restored gradually. This process cannot be rushed. Bruce Lee's understanding of this process came from years of observation and experimentation. He studied how bodies respond under stress, how balance shifts during movement, and how timing affects outcome. He knew that power is not stored in muscles alone, but in coordination between systems. By disrupting that coordination, he removed the opponent's ability to express strength effectively. The body was intact, but its organization was compromised. This is why the effect felt so deep and confusing. This experience revealed an important truth. Physical ability depends on harmony between multiple systems. When one system is disrupted, the entire structure suffers. Bruce Lee's technique demonstrated how fragile that harmony can be when targeted precisely. The lasting effect was not meant to punish or harm. It was a natural consequence of how the body functions. Bruce Lee did not rely on brutality to achieve results. He relied on understanding. This is what made his approach so effective and so unsettling. It showed that power does not disappear because of injury, but because of disruption. and restoring that power requires patience, not force. The opponent recovered fully. Strength returned. Coordination normalized. But the lesson remained. The human body is not just muscle and bone. It is timing, balance, and signal working together. Disrupt those elements, and power fades. Quietly but completely. Bruce Lee was not interested in dominating another person or proving superiority through force. His intention in that moment was not to intimidate, embarrass, or establish hierarchy. What he wanted to demonstrate was far more subtle and far more important. He wanted to show that true effectiveness does not need drama, volume, or repeated action to be real. Bruce Lee believed that genuine skill reveals itself quietly. It does not rely on exaggerated movement or visible aggression. It does not demand attention. Instead, it works efficiently, with clarity and precision, producing results that speak for themselves. This belief shaped everything about how he approached combat and training. In many systems, power is measured by impact. The harder the strike, the more impressive it appears. Bruce Lee questioned this idea deeply. He understood that striking hard is not the same as striking correctly. A powerful blow that misses its purpose wastes energy and creates risk. A precise action applied at the right moment achieves far more with far less effort. The demonstration was designed to make this point undeniable. Bruce Lee did not overwhelm his opponent with repeated attacks. He did not push him to exhaustion. He applied one controlled technique, carefully chosen and precisely delivered. The result was immediate and lasting, not because of pain but because of understanding. This approach revealed something many people overlook. The human body is not a solid object to be broken through. It is a dynamic system that relies on balance, timing, coordination, and communication. When these systems work together, strength flows naturally. When they are disrupted, strength becomes irrelevant. Bruce Lee focused on understanding these systems rather than fighting against them. He studied how posture supports movement, how balance shifts during motion, and how timing determines vulnerability. This knowledge allowed him to apply techniques that worked with the body's structure rather than opposing it. The opponent did not leave the experience injured or resentful. There were no bruises to display and no visible damage to point to. Instead, he left with something far more lasting: respect. The demonstration challenged his assumptions about what skill looks like and how power is expressed. This shift in understanding is central to the lesson Bruce Lee was teaching. Real skill does not rely on strength alone. It relies on insight. It requires knowing where to apply effort and where effort is unnecessary. It demands awareness rather than aggression. Bruce Lee wanted people to see that technique is not about doing more. It is about doing exactly what is needed and nothing extra. Excess movement creates openings. Excess force creates imbalance. Precision, on the other hand, creates control. Another important part of this lesson is restraint. Bruce Lee showed that having the ability to cause harm does not mean it should be used indiscriminately. True mastery includes responsibility. Knowing how to stop is just as important as knowing how to act. By stepping back after the demonstration, Bruce Lee reinforced this idea. He allowed the result to stand on its own. He did not continue or escalate. This restraint communicated confidence far more clearly than continued action ever could. The lesson extended beyond physical technique. It applied to mindset. Bruce Lee believed that clarity of understanding leads to clarity of action. When you understand what truly matters in a situation, unnecessary effort falls away. Action becomes simple and direct. This is why effectiveness does not need to announce itself. When something works perfectly, it does not need explanation. The outcome makes the truth clear. Bruce Lee trusted this principle deeply. The opponent's reaction reflected this. There was no argument afterward, no attempt to downplay what had happened. The experience had shifted his perspective. He understood that strength without understanding is incomplete. Bruce Lee's teaching style often followed this pattern. He preferred demonstration over explanation when words could not capture the truth. He believed that direct experience creates understanding that theory alone cannot provide. At this moment, Bruce Lee offered a lesson that went beyond martial arts. He showed that real power comes from insight, not force, from awareness, not aggression, from precision, not excess. This lesson remains relevant because it challenges how people define strength. It invites a re-evaluation of effort, control, and mastery. It suggests that the highest level of skill is not loud or chaotic, but calm, efficient, and decisive. By choosing to teach in this way, Bruce Lee demonstrated a deeper form of mastery, one that values understanding over dominance and respect over victory. That is the lesson he was teaching, and it is why the moment remains meaningful long after the movement itself ended. That moment did not become memorable because of force or spectacle. It remained powerful because of what it revealed. Bruce Lee showed that real skill does not compete for attention. It settles the question quietly and completely. The opponent recovered physically, but the understanding stayed. What changed was not the body, but the way power was perceived. Strength was no longer something loud or aggressive. It became something precise, informed, and controlled. This story leaves us with a simple truth. When understanding is deep, action becomes minimal. When timing and awareness are correct, effort becomes unnecessary. Bruce Lee did not need to prove anything further. One moment of clarity was enough to demonstrate what true mastery looks like. And that is why the lesson endured, because it was not taught through force but through understanding.